Hey guys, it's Editing Gemma. So before I put this video out, I just wanted to let you guys know and give you a heads up that the holder that I have that holds my camera, it's snapped and there's no way to fix it. And my backup, I don't have here with me and I can't get it right now. So I literally had to take packing tape and tape the thing on. But I noticed as I'm editing that as I'm filming, the camera just keeps going down, and then I pull it back up and it goes down, and then it's like moving. So I do apologize for the ever moving camera. I apologize again at the end of the video, but I'm really sorry. I thought that it was going to stay put. It didn't, and I don't want to redo this really long video. It's not, I got to kind of stick to my schedule. So I apologize if it's distracting or annoying to anyone. You guys know normally my videos are pretty straightforward and precise and all that jazz. So hopefully I can have it fixed by the next video. So just forgive me. We don't need to come at me in the comments or even mention it. I would appreciate it because I'm aware of it. I'm frustrated. I'm PO'd and I'm trying to fix it. Enjoy the video, guys. What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing the terrifying phenomenon of dream demons. So we've discussed demons on this channel pretty regularly, and sometimes I'm not sure if that was a purposeful thing done by me or not. I often wonder if, because of my abilities and my interest altogether in the occult and all things otherworldly, if I'm somehow becoming sucked into something that maybe I might regret one day. Well, I guess if I am, then you all are coming right along with me. So when discussing the realm of sleep and of dreams in general, I believe it's an accurate assumption to make that this is by no means a modern day interest, but most likely has been a subject for discussion and debate since the beginning of time. Isn't it crazy, though, that we seem to be no closer to deciphering dreams and what they mean or the sleep state than way back when we were first able to wonder about these things, whenever that was? There are so many theories and opinions on what dreams are and whether or not they are glimpses into the future, the past, alternate lifetimes, and or other realms, different dimensions, other realities, etc. There isn't by any stretch of the imagination so much as a general consensus as to what all of this could be or mean. The theories, the thoughts, the ideas, people are so incredibly divided when it comes to what dreams are, or really anything about dreams or the sleep state, nightmares too. The realm of dreams is something that I personally very much believe has to do with our sub and or superconscious minds. We can so easily learn languages or heal ourselves. We can do so many amazing things just by closing our eyes and falling asleep, but I'm going to save that for another time in another video. There are many commonalities across the world and throughout the ages, and while there are still a few that stand out to me, today we are going to be discussing the one that I find most concerning: demons or demon-like and evil entities who appear to us while we sleep. They appear in our nightmares, and some say they even appear in our dreams. Now, we've discussed sleep paralysis and shadow entities at length here on this channel, and come the new year, my new book titled Shadow Entities Beyond the Sleep Paralysis Demon should be coming out. So I chose to take a little break from that and focus on the demonic forces that torment us not only when we're asleep, but oftentimes that follow us right into our own world for a few seconds or even moments after we wake up. Sometimes they even stay there. And yes, I will be talking about sleep paralysis, obviously, because that's a huge part of this, but that's not all the video is going to be about. I want to talk about the entities themselves as well. So I know, with beyond the shadow of a doubt, pun intended, that these evil entities, these shadow entities, these demons, these demonic forces do stay with us. Again, whether it be seconds, minutes, or however long. Some people pull them out of nightmares for a lifetime. How else could anyone explain the terrifying encounters I'm bringing to you today and so much of the other factual evidence that they're real? The skeptics and scholars certainly give it their best shot, though, but in my opinion, they don't present much reasonable evidence or even really credible evidence to back it up, just their own educated guesses. The proof is in the pudding, as they say. How many of you guys have experienced something similar to what I'm bringing to you guys today? Let me know. And as always, if you've had your own encounters with demons or otherworldly creatures, supernatural, paranormal, extraterrestrial, whatever entities, I would love to hear about it. My email info will be set at the end of the video and also in the description box below. Are these actual creatures and entities who wait for the perfect moment to strike? The moment when we are the most vulnerable, when we fall asleep? Or is the whole thing just some sort of strange mass hysteria or suggestive hallucination type thing, or sleep paralysis? Is there a reasonable and rational explanation that we either haven't figured out yet or that someone has figured out and we just aren't ready to accept it as truth? As always, I'll let you all form your own opinions and be the judge for yourselves. Grab your Ouija boards and cuddle up in bed because here it is, guys, the terrifying phenomenon of dream demons. These dream demons have been reported throughout the ages and through the world since the dawn of time. It's almost never the exact same accounts, though, as the entities and experiences are as vast and as unique as the people across the globe who report having encountered them. The victim will sometimes wake in a state of total terror and paralysis, which we have come to be quite familiar with and know with absolute certainty that there is something evil in the room with them. Sometimes the entity shows itself and or attacks, and sometimes it simply makes its presence known while remaining either in the peripherals of the witness's vision or completely invisible. Sometimes, again knowingly or otherwise, the person was most likely having an encounter with this and several other evil and demonic creatures and forces while they were dreaming, right up until the time they woke up. Most of the time, though, they won't remember what was happening before waking up in this so-called sleep paralysis state. The accounts vary, but usually consist of the person being strangled or suffocated. They could also feel a weight bearing down on their chest, making it near impossible for them to move or breathe, or even to let out a sound. There are reports of sexual assaults as well as violent physical attacks too. The incapacitating energy of doom, fear, and dread surely stems from the entity's malevolence, and it's something almost all of us can feel, at least a little bit, because it seems to be primal in nature. It comes from inside a place most of us aren't even aware of most of the time. It's instinctual. These entities are oftentimes accompanied by rancid and horrible smells and stenches that otherwise have never been there before and which don't linger very long after the incident. There are strange sounds too, and almost 100% of the time, the victim is the only one who can hear them. The smells, I would say, at least in my experience, are smelled by others in the room about 75% of the time, which is a huge difference, right? Those are not statistical facts, though, guys. They're my own guesstimations based off of my personal and lifelong experiences and research. The smells are absolutely horrid, and they're usually described as unlike anything the waking world would normally be able to dredge up. It's a stench of sulfur, rot, and decay that would make a 2-week-old dead body that sat out in the heat smell like a warm vanilla sugar candle. A psychologist at Goldsmiths College in London, England, Professor Chris French, said of the ever-expanding phenomenon, quote, "It's very common experience, but typically people haven't heard of it. I have people calling me about it, and often they have the same story. They've been suffering and never told anyone because others would think they were crazy. In the whistles and bells version, people get a strong sense of a presence, and they may also get hallucinations. They may see dark shadows and lights and monstrous figures, or footsteps and mechanical sounds and voices. They may feel as if they're being dragged out of bed. It's absolutely terrifying. There is also intense fear. It doesn't have a dreamlike quality. It feels incredibly real," end quote. Guys, these are all things which are incredibly distinctive and which mainly stay the same in the reports throughout the world. And again, as far back as we humans have had the capacity to ponder such things. If you've ever experienced anything like this yourself, I am sure at least some of this sounds very familiar to you. It's inexplicable and extremely unpleasant. I personally have gone years at a time having these experiences throughout my life. It's like a few years on and a few years off, and during the years where my attacks are nightly, it changes me in such a profound way as I go about my daily life and try to focus on my daily responsibilities like work and taking care of my toddler and taking care of my house and just everything that I have to do throughout the day. It's almost all consuming, at least in my own experience. I can't even imagine what it would be like for someone to randomly experience this phenomenon just once, because then, I mean, how could it not take over your mind? The fear a person would feel would probably be almost unbearable, and I believe this is where a lot of people end up being treated as mentally ill or as having alleged sleep disorders. To me, it's all hogwash, guys. Bull hickey, bill duty, hogwash, poop. Looking into the face of the obvious and calling it a bad dream or even a nightmare, all while being faced with unbridled evil, it's absolutely mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling, but that's just me. Here is another very short encounter from someone unknown. Quote, "I couldn't move a muscle. Something was in the room and walked across the bed. I tried to scream, but only a slight noise came from my throat. whoever or whatever was in my room then disappeared. Unfortunately, I've been getting this horrible paralysis for about 2 months now. The last time it happened, I managed to open my eyes, but I still could not move my body, end quote. That's the thing though, isn't it? The fact that it doesn't matter one bit who is recounting their own experience and where they're from. It doesn't even matter when it all happened because it's always generally the same theme. With that being said, I know some people are skeptical of anonymous encounters, and I don't really blame you. So here's one we can put a face and a name to. The victim's name is Helena Adelina, and she is a 24-year-old who reported an extremely vivid and very menacing encounter for months on end, every single night, and she very quickly became a believer. She is absolutely sure that what she experienced was 100% real. Here's what she had to say about it. Quote, "He was a tall, slim figure, but with no features, like a silhouette. My sense was that he was terrifying, an ancient being, very dark and pure evil. Sometimes I would wake and not see him, but hear his voice in my ear talking about destruction, war, and death. Sometimes he would grab me around the ankles and drag me under the covers. I would be fighting it and struggling to breathe. Sometimes a woman would enter the scene, laughing and cackling. She would keep slapping me around the face and laughing, finding it all very amusing. And there would be a serious ringing in my ears. When I came out of it, my ears would still be ringing very badly. At the time it was happening, it felt like it was going on forever. How long it went on for? I don't even know." End quote. At first glance, it would seem she knew the gender of the entities despite them being featureless, maybe because of the sound of the female's laugh and obviously the man's voice whispering in her ear, and that could have very well been the case. I will say though, again, through personal experiences and what many of my clients and friends have reported to me, that it's somehow very easy for most of us, meaning human beings, to simply know energetically the gender of whatever entity we are dealing with. And that is true, guys, at least in my experience. Again, it's some sort of primal instinct or reflex left over from our caveman days. I wholeheartedly believe this woman experienced the jinn in these attacks. The jinn often marry, and they always marry the opposite sex, and they even have children. They are ancient and often work in tandem, though this is only the 4th or 5th encounter where I've seen a male and a female, most likely husband and wife, working in tandem like this. When I hear of someone being pulled out of their bed or pulled under their covers, dragged by their feet, however it's done, it is more than likely a jinn attack, as that's one of their known ways of terrorizing us. It's like one of their signatures or calling cards. Oftentimes, this is all said to happen in a person's dreams, as in they feel as though they are being dragged out of bed or off a couch, removed in this way from wherever they're asleep, dragged or pulled. I know that skeptics will come out of the woodwork and try to brush these encounters off as the person having had a very vivid and real seeming nightmare. That perhaps something they saw on television or came across on the internet planted a seed in their heads, and it weaved its way into their subconscious minds, causing the seemingly real yet entirely imagined and harrowing ordeal. I would challenge them to explain to me how it could all be imagined when it affects the person or their environment physically. Things like waking up with marks around your neck after encountering an entity you felt was strangling you, waking with bruises on a part of your body that was struck by the entity, and even the evidence left behind during sexual assaults in the night and by demonic, non-human entities. What is the simple explanation then? Most of the time when I do videos on these types of entities, when someone else is in the room or even in the same bed as the victim/witness, the person not being attacked seems to be unable to be woken up despite what's happening right next to them. It's not only when the person is in a state of paralysis and can't scream either. I've had my own experiences where I've screamed and fought, and my husband didn't even seem to move, let alone wake up. This is not uncommon. However, there are cases where the attack and physical assaults against the victim are witnessed by one or several other people who are too shocked to even try to do anything to help. I mean, imagine if you wake up and your significant other is being dragged across the room by their hair. Like, what do you even do? We in this community might be able to think of something, right? But for the average human being, what do? You sit there and scream in terror and pray you don't pee and poop yourself. My advice to you, if any of that should ever happen, seriously though, guys, should you see something like this, don't get directly involved, because you could turn the entity's wrath upon yourself and make yourself another one of its victims. And it's like, okay, if it's going after my child, that would be a good thing. Or no, you're not going to be the sole focus. Then most of the time, and more often than not, the entity is going to go after both of you, or bring in a tandem entity. A tandem entity? I don't know if that's a thing. Bring in another entity to work in tandem with it. So here's what you can do. Start praying fervently. Even if you don't believe in prayer or God, I beg you, pray. It works almost every single time. The bruises, scratches, burn marks, and all of the other injuries incurred by these entities during sleep are wounds that could not possibly have been self-inflicted. We aren't talking about a fall out of the bed here, guys. We aren't talking about getting bit by a spider or a rodent either, though for me, personally, a demonic entity or force is preferable to a rodent in my home, let alone my bed, but that's just me. Anyways, here is an encounter that comes from a man who was serving time in an American prison, and his very brutal physical attack was witnessed by his cellmate. The man said of the incident, quote, "The last time it happened, I was tossing and turning around trying to get some sleep when a strange dark power pulled me off of the bed and pushed me against the wall. My cellmate screamed when he saw what was happening," end quote. Prisons are notorious for being almost overrun by evil and demonic forces due to all of the terrible things that happen inside of their walls. And if you don't think terrible things happen in prisons anymore, you're naive. The injustice, the murders, the fights, etc., just the overall energy of the people who live in them is enough to open up several vortexes and portals into the unknown and unseen realms where evil is known to reside. When asked about it, the cellmate would swear up and down that he saw the victim being physically lifted off of his bed and thrown up against the wall. This wasn't just a man looking for attention either, guys. He wasn't tossing himself a few inches off of a floor and into a wall as hard as he could either. The cellmate said the other guy was literally launched, and I quote, "into the opposite wall of the room the bed he was lifted out of was on." So he was picked up over here and thrown over there. There are an innumerable number of cases, too, where the alleged quote-unquote visual hallucinations are seen by others in the room. Also, what about when objects are thrown or otherwise move on their own? It's not something that goes unnoticed by others in the vicinity of the victim either. In my mind, these facts alone make it impossible that these are actual hallucinations at all, and that they are, quite obviously, at least in my own very humble opinion, come from me, very real and actually happening. There was an article about all of this written by a man named Craig Hamilton Parker, and he tells of an account sent to him by an elderly victim who said, quote, "I'm terrified at night as I believe that I'm being menaced by a ghost or a spirit. If I awake during the night, I see what I would call smoke in my room. One night, my husband and I saw the harrowing sight of my bedclothes being slowly pulled off the bed. But the last straw was when I felt it move to the side of the bed and poke me hard in the arm. I prayed out loud, but it would not go away," end quote. Like I said, prayer works 99% of the time, in my opinion. But the thing about prayer is you actually have to believe that your prayer is going to be answered. Not a religious debate, just my own experience and opinions. Again, in my own opinion, when prayer doesn't work, you are encountering the evilest of evil entities and forces, and more than likely, you are at a much higher risk for physical violence, serious injury, possession, or even in some cases, death. If you don't believe me, look at my video on Christopher Case or read the shorter version of what happened to him in my second book. And he isn't the only one killed by shadow entities and evil in the night, and not by a long shot either. Our next report comes from the website Psychic Experiences and comes from a witness who claims the evil he encountered in his nightmares left behind very real and very physical changes in the real world, and which he knows is undoubtedly connected to the paranormal and otherworldly realms. In his experiences, the entity actually names itself and calls itself by not one, but by two names, Lilin and Gammagen. What sort of evil supernatural creature or being lurks in the shadows at night and actually gives out its name? Not one name, but two names? Stay with me, as I have heard these names before and have dealt with it personally. It's extremely uncommon, to the point of almost being unheard of, for a demon or evil being to name itself. It gives the human too much power over it. But then again, the human in question would have to be aware of that fact in order to use or wield any of that power, wouldn't they? So, this victim reported always encountering the same entity, the one with the two names, and that the situation would always be the same. The entity brings the victim to an unfamiliar house in an unknown place where the house is packed almost to the brim with random strangers. He said of what happened, quote, "It's an apartment filled with strangers who are waiting on me but won't tell me why. Then fear strikes when it occurs to me this guy who brought me here is a demon. He then tells me the women in the room want my soul, and he's brought me to them. He said that it was his job to give me to them, and that by doing so, he would be allowed back into hell. In my dream, I began to pray, which made the demon and the people in this place really angry. The women came out from the room where they had been waiting for me, and they were witches. I showed them a gray streak in the front of my hair, which I have in real life, and I told them that I was a witch too. So while they were confused, I tried to escape. At this point, I was finally able to wake myself up. I ended up falling back asleep and right back into the dream. This time, the demon came to me differently, but with the same goal of getting my soul so he could return to hell. I finally woke up and would not let myself go back to sleep. I looked up the names of the demon he gave me, which were actually real names to the Christian-based demons. I have previously never looked into it, any type of demonology, nor did I watch anything about it before I went to sleep. In fact, I have never heard of any of these names before, which scares me even more. I have always been sensitive to spirits and energy, but never anything like this, nor anything that ever scared me this much. I will also add that about 2 years ago, my younger sister started dabbling in witchcraft and brought in a Ouija board and messed with that as well. I was not home during this time and she has since moved out, but I fear she may have opened something she had no business to. Side note, the past few weeks I have had experiences with something cold on the back of my neck, the house being incredibly colder inside than the temperatures outside, lights turning off and on for no reason, and weird unexplained noises, end quote. Alright guys, so before we break apart this encounter, let's talk about the entities themselves. The man was hearing the name Lilin, but really the demons are Lilim. Lilim is literally translated to mean night spirits. And this is probably why there are two names, as Lilim is more than one being. In my experience and from what I understand, it's like when demons say they are legion. It just means that there are many, a legion of them, if you will. These spirits were known to attack men in the middle of the night, and the men were usually chosen randomly. They are also said to be the daughters of Lilith. I could do a whole video on her alone, so I'll try my best to keep my information short and to the point here. I feel it's necessary at least a little bit to talk about the forces attacking this man on a nightly basis because we actually have some information in order to be able to do so right now. The fact that they choose only men shouldn't come as a surprise, as they are top tier succubi who live in covens throughout the world in realms and dimensions unseen to us and access us through the same portals which all the other evil entities and forces seem to. If you want me to do some kind of video on some common demons or ones that I've come across, demons throughout history, something like that, don't hesitate to let me know in the comments below. So anyways, the Lilim are evil and lustful and usually do the bidding of their mother, Lilith. They have an Asmodai who is their male counterpart. The Asmodai are the princes of hell themselves. That's a lot of really terrifying power here, guys. So okay, let's briefly discuss the other name he heard and then move on to unpack the encounter itself, because I have some really interesting ideas about this one. Oh, and I know that someone out there, at least one person, is going to be wondering why, if these are succubi, the man isn't reporting sexual attacks or assaults. I can't know for sure, obviously, but I will make another educated guess that he is being willed not to remember because most likely his sperm is being collected for seeding. That's, again, another video altogether. Also, remember, I said they act at the behest of their mother, Lilith, and she too is a succubus, but does much more than assault men sexually. Gamagan is the fourth Goshia demon, and I'm probably mispronouncing. He is the great Marquis of the first circle of hell, a noble among other demons. Very powerful, very dangerous. He is known to be talented with his weapon of choice, which is an arrow, and he rules over approximately 30 legions of lesser demons, okay? I didn't know this off the top of my head, of course, but I did already have the research on these two particular names and so many more because of my real life clients and everything they report to me when dealing with demonic entities and forces. Why would a demon need a weapon like an arrow, right? That perhaps is the most terrifying part of all of this. It's for when he chooses to take on a human form, and he could choose to do that for any number of reasons. With all of that being said, let's see if we can unpack the encounter and possibly put together why these entities are making our victim experience such a specific nightmare each and every time. Does it all make sense yet? Hello? Lilith is very high up in hell, and most people who know about such things, and I don't mean religious scholars, say she is second only to Satan himself and possibly even his lover and the father of some of the Lilim. Of course, it's usually most of the time human men who father the Lilim with Lilith. Could it be possible that the little sister opened the door to something she had no idea about and had no idea that she opened that door? Lilith saw something in the brother she wanted, and the sexual attacks never happened because it was his soul and not his seed she was after. Not this time anyway. Gamagan most likely somehow pissed her off, and she sent him to collect the soul and offered him a spot back in hell and into her good graces if he obtained it for her. As for the room full of women who said they are witches and who also allegedly wanted his soul, well, the Lilim are witches, as I've already stated, and this is the evil type of witch that you normally think of when you hear the word. Most of us witches are benign, as many of you already know, so I don't even have to get into that, but they want what their mother wants. They are female and appear as such when they take on their human form, which they can do because most are half human themselves. Because of this, they are considered somewhat lesser and need to prove themselves. Okay, so back to the other encounters, because I can talk about this all night. Whether I do or not, be it in a video or otherwise, is of course completely up to the feedback I get from you all. Speaking of succubi, here is a report that came in by a woman who claims to have been visited many times by an incubus creature. This is an example of these entities being able to not only physically interact with, but also to physically affect the environment around them. This one, at least to me, was particularly strange, and that's why I decided to include it here. This woman claims to have been visited nightly by a sex crazed and maniacal demonic entity. The demon not only attacked her nightly for years, but her daughter as well, and it would move objects around the room, which were often seen by others who were, for one reason or another, there with the terrified women. This woman explained, quote, "My age is 47 and I am female. For about 6 years, my daughter and I felt walking on the bed and other surfaces that we sleep on. My husband and son, they thought we were nuts. It would happen while we were completely awake or even just getting into bed. The walking would be light and sometimes the bed would wave. A couple of times during that approximate 6 years, I would wake up to find something sexual happening. At that time, I would shake it away. My husband had been sick for the last 5 years, stroke and other complications, and this past December, he passed away. A few months before he died, though, I found him sitting on the side of his bed looking ashen. He had told me that something jumped on his bed. It had happened before, many times, and he had always blamed it on the cat, even though the cat was not in his room. This time he believed, and he was shaken. On August 1st, the entities were back in my bed, and this time I relented in a weak moment. I can't understand how I could have because of the thought of it. The thought of it frightens me. The first few times my heart was beating like a drum. Once it started, though, it never ended. I developed an insatiable appetite for sex and didn't stop thinking about it 24 hours in the day. Neither did they. I rationalized that it was friendly spirits of the universe, but I knew in the back of my mind differently. For 3 days, going on 4, I had constant sex. They did not enter for long, and then the next one would come. I could not get enough. Literally, I couldn't even function normally anymore. I was at work and something that was cold enveloped me, starting at my feet and ending behind me. My hands, which were trying to type at the time, were frozen in place, but not paralyzed. The thing seemed to scare the others away, like it had some power beyond theirs. It had sex with me while I was sitting in the chair, but it was different, more mellow and soft. It scared me tremendously because it was outward and not inward like the others. This is all going to wear me down if I don't find some serious help. This is all true, end quote. So, whether you believe this particular account or not, this actually happens more than you could ever imagine. The women and men, too, when dealing with the succubus, end up relenting and not only allowing the demons to have sex with them, but they actually, realizing it, but not realizing it most of the time, invite it to. This isn't because the sex is tremendous or something, though I'm sure, I don't know. More often than not, it's reported as painful and like being ripped apart from the inside out. It's believed that more often than not, this is actually a form of really deep and really serious possession. Initially, at least, the demons make the experience pleasurable, despite being so frightening. And while I don't want to get too nasty or too personal here, I think all of us women remember that one guy. Okay, now let me stop there, but that's what it's like, ladies, that one guy. That one guy. By the way, good for you if you still have that one guy in your life. This woman and her daughter most likely ended up in full-blown possession, and God only knows what happened to them. There are no years mentioned, so I wouldn't even know where to look for more info on what transpired since or where they are now, unfortunately. The amounts of reports of things like all of the above-mentioned encounters and so much more are so tremendous, it's downright terrifying to think of. As you can plainly see, even just by the few I've recounted for you here, it almost always happens while the victim is awake and very aware of what's going on. Let's face it, even when you're just waking up or you're still groggy from sleep, something happening like the things I've mentioned above definitely have the ability to immediately wake us up and make us extremely aware of our surroundings and what's going on around us. It's like when you're drunk or high and something or another happens and you're confronted with a tragedy, or even in some situations the police, and you're almost immediately more sober than you were only seconds beforehand. I think that most of you can relate to that probably. Let's talk for just a minute about sleep paralysis, because this is the most common explanation modern day scientists and so-called experts on the subject will attribute all of this to. All of it. It's said to affect 25 to 40% of the population at one point in their lives or another. Well, quote, 25 to 40% or more, end quote, is the actual quote used most times. Pretty vague if you ask me, but moving right along, they allege this is a natural phenomenon and that there is nothing otherworldly or paranormal about it, despite evidence to the contrary that has been being reported literally since the dawn of time. So these so-called experts and scientists explain it like this. When we go to sleep, we enter the REM or rapid eye movement stage of sleep, which is when the eyes move back and forth at a very rapid pace underneath the eyelids. It's only in the REM stage that we will dream, and in order to keep our bodies from acting out what we are experiencing in the dream, like moving our arms when we are dreaming of swimming or kicking our legs when we are practicing Taekwondo. Of course, I am being somewhat facetious here, guys, because as we all very well know, many times we do actually act out in our sleep, and I myself have given a good whack to whoever was sleeping next to me when doing exactly what these experts say we cannot do in our sleep. So anyways, in order to keep us from acting out what we are seeing or experiencing in the dream during REM sleep, a neurotransmitter is released into the brain and then into the body called glycine, and also a nerve receptor in the voluntary muscles called GABA, which is supposed to effectively paralyze us. I'm not buying it at all. Sorry, not buying it. At least not 99% of the cases I've come across, but allegedly these chemicals should be all but gone by the time we wake up, regardless of how deep the sleep was at the time. These experts claim that in some cases, although they allege this is very rare, again, despite all of the evidence to the contrary, these chemicals will still be active when your brain wakes up, either fully or even partially, during the REM stage of sleep. So this would keep your motor functions not working mostly or at all, despite your body and brain feeling fully awake and aware of your surroundings. According to this theory, which I'm sorry, but I will state again, is extremely ludicrous, at least in my humble opinion, sensing an evil presence or some sort of supernatural attacker is merely your brain's way of trying to align itself with what's going on. In a desperate attempt at rationalizing, the brain then creates these evil entities and shadow beings and whatever else has been being reported as coming through for literal millennia, and sleep paralysis is used to explain so much more than these attacks and intruders too. It's been said to be the cause of poltergeist activity, alien abductions, and even demonic possessions. Yes, sleep paralysis, guys. The fact of the matter is, while this is the accepted scientific and rational explanation, there still isn't much at all, if anything, by way of facts to back this up. Sure, studies have been done, but these entities aren't stupid and would much rather their existence and their attacks and the terror they leave behind in their wake be blamed on science and not on them. They know exactly what they're doing. Also, sometimes we can refuse to see what's right in front of us, and I bet anything that there are scientists and so-called experts out there who have seen these entities, or at the very least the attacks on the test subjects with their own eyes, and yet refuse to accept it as a reality. What they could possibly be telling themselves in order for them to be doing this, I'm sure I don't know. But this is why I call these types of people sleepers. I'm by no means mocking, judging, or trying to indict them. I just simply, I personally cannot understand their thought processes, not at all. And they say we, the experiencer, and those of us in this community are the crazy ones. Go figure. It's poorly understood and terribly over-explained at best. A misfiring of the brain will never be an acceptable answer for me as to why someone is lifted off their bed and thrown across the room, or why I myself have been dragged off of my bed by my legs and down the stairs on a tour of my very big house while I was now wide awake and petrified. I know I wasn't dreaming. I woke up downstairs on the kitchen floor and I went to bed in my bed, okay? There's an article called The Dark Side of Lucid Dreams, and it explains why there's more than likely much more to all of this than a simple brain misfire. As I reiterate, I do tend to agree. This article states in part, quote, "This class of nightmares seems not to be merely reflections of fear, but to have an autonomous energy all its own. There is intelligence in the eyes of the dream figures, and they don't like to be told that they are but a symbol of some waking life fear or that they are not real. They have their own story to tell, but we often do not know how to listen yet," end quote. So while this is a bit of a cryptic explanation, it does get the point across, right? It by no means says that every single person who has a bad dream or a terrifying nightmare of an attack by some supernatural or demonic force or whatever is a real thing that's happening to them. I will say, though, that I believe most times that's exactly what it is, especially when it's recurring or happens more than just once or twice. So if you ask anyone who has ever experienced this type of encounter and or attack, once or twice is more than enough for them to be sure that they never want to have it happen again. Whether real or imagined really doesn't mean much when you're being strangled to death or sexually assaulted by some demonic entity or force or whatever else lurks in the shadows and waits until we are at our most vulnerable to strike out at us. It isn't like it's some seemingly brand new phenomenon like the Glimmerman or the Pale Crawlers. We humans have been being hunted since the first of us existed here on this earth, and the evil doing the hunting has several legs up on us, despite us slowly becoming wiser and more onto them and their ways. Well, some of us at least. So what do you guys think? A trick of the brain or actual demonic/evil encounters? Should we say simply encounters, as there have been many wonderful and enlightening experiences had by people while sleeping, which turned out to be absolutely life-changing in the best possible of ways? Many of these having had some sort of real evidentiary proof left behind, something tangible that can't be simply explained away or whittled down to some semi-scientific kind of data half answer. Possibly both. I do very much so believe that sleep paralysis is a real thing. But I believe it's the paralysis state that most of these entities wait for, and when they see us in the midst of it, they strike. It's perhaps a bit of both, and again, some people are just having bad dreams or nightmares and regular old sleep paralysis. When there is even an inkling of evil afoot during the paralysis episode, that's when the situation turns for me, and I refuse to believe the brain is creating entities we know to exist and that have existed before we even did in this world. What are the odds that one witness simply created those names in order to explain a series of recurring nightmares, and they just happen to be very real, very evil, and extremely dangerous, possibly even deadly? I'm not a betting woman, but I'm curious to hear what you all would have to say on that. Would you bet the house on that? That it's just sleep paralysis, and he just conjured up these names that happen to be real? That's just one of the encounters, but that one did stick with me because those entities are, whew. So guys, this was a long one, and again, I do apologize for my camera. It's just slowly slipping down. I'm going to have to figure something else out because I have many more videos to film today. So wish me luck. You don't have to draw my attention to the ever-moving camera in the comments. I'm very aware of it. I'm very pissed about it. So I acknowledged it. I apologize. I'm going to fix it. Let's move on. And I know this was a long one, but I could have kept right on going like another entire hour. But that's all I have for you today, guys. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed hanging out with me, if you enjoyed the content, and if you just want to see me smile. Spread the love by sharing this video, please, and check out the description box for some important links. I have a book signing in Sussex, New Jersey on October 26th from 6 to 9 p.m. And after 9, I will be doing a paranormal night. I'll have my merchandise there, my manifestation intention sprays, my spiritual helper boxes, possibly some crystals, but mainly, I will have my books and I will be selling them and signing them. If you would like to simply purchase a book from Amazon, I will leave the Kindle and paperback version in the description box. If you're in the Sussex, New Jersey area that night or want to come and say hi, Ghost Dragon ZW will be coming from Ohio to join me, and just so many other amazing people that I haven't seen in so long, and then whoever else is going to be there. I might do one-card readings. Anything could happen. So that's October 26th. It is a Wednesday, and it's in Sussex, New Jersey, starting at 6 p.m. Email me if you would just like to purchase a copy of one of my books, either Missing the Faith Theory or Encounters with Evil, 101 True and Terrifying Stories, or both. and you would like an autographed copy, please email me before you make the purchase. If you would like a personal intuitive oracle reading, either by video or remotely, please also email me for more information on that. Wednesday nights from 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time to 11:15 p.m. Eastern Time, or until we run out of people to read for. It's me and Ghost Dragon ZW right here on this channel doing one card pulls, random card, random deck. Come on in. It's for donation only. So if you don't have a donation, that's okay too. Come in, get you a reading. Guys, I know that I'm forgetting a lot of stuff, but I hate rambling at the end, and I'm super pissed about my camera. So be kind to each other, guys. It doesn't cost anything. Be kind to yourselves and never accept anything less than others being kind to you. Why? Because you're amazing. You're capable. You're smart. Okay? You deserve the absolute best. And you should always, always, always know that about yourself. Always go in grace, smile at a stranger, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye. I hope my head's not cut out.